Right, so we're live. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone wherever you are around the world. My name is Oluseyi Lala, and you're welcome to Achievers Zone Season 2. We're super excited that we're able to come back for another season after the very first one. And I'll just give you a bit of a background about Achievers Zone. So I was inspired to start Achievers Zone in the year 2020, just before the pandemic hit, because I wanted to share some of the things that I've done over the years, to achieve the goals and target that I set on a yearly basis. And those principles came to me when I was listening to a couple of my mentors, and I kind of practiced it and saw the results. And I felt that, yes, it'd be nice to share that. So we started in 2020, and I gathered a couple of my friends that I could term achievers, those who were doing stuff in their specific domains and area of influence, and they were, achieving things. So we come together in a relaxed atmosphere, just sit down and have a chit chat. I ask questions and all of that. And that was what we did in 2020. So in the year 2020, we booked 10 episodes. We were able to do 9. One of them we had a technical problem, but we're able to complete that season successfully. And the response has been, magnificent. Over the years, we've been thinking of, okay, how do we go back to start another season? And luckily, late last year, we got the production group together and we started discussing and we started looking at, okay, who do we call in to join us for this season? And I'm happy to announce that for the season, we have 12 people that will be joining us, one every month, to talk about, a topic that we will discuss in the zone, Achiever Zone, and we'll share that with the groups that we have. So we have 2 groups, one on LinkedIn and one on Facebook, and I'm sure that a couple of people, have already joined the groups. And this is also, to invite you to join the groups, so that you can partake of this and get experience and glean some nuggets from people. I'm super excited about this because, like I said, from October last year, we've been planning this, and today is episode 1 of season 2. Joining me today is a very good friend and brother of mine. I've known him for so long. I did an intro about him last year when we were counting down to the start of the season. I will let him introduce himself at some point, but let me just tell you that I know this person as a serial value creator. We've had conversations over the years, and typically our conversations last 1 hour, 2 hours, because we're just talking and bouncing ideas off each other. It is my great pleasure to welcome to Achievers Zone Season 2, Episode 1, Dr. Nicolas Allo. Doctor,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. How are you doing?
I'm very well. I've been
Okay.
looking forward to this opportunity, so it's an honor to be here.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much for the
Thank you.
support, for all the discussions we've had in the past. And this is just like one of those discussions we usually have.
Agreed.
So I
Agreed.
don't see it as any
Agreed.
big deal. 1 hour will fly just like that. So I'm really excited and happy about this. And I
Thank
love
you.
the topic that we've agreed on, which
Yes.
is overcoming fear, to becoming an achiever.
Yes.
It's something that we need to talk about because, again, when we're looking at the achiever zone, like I said, it's supposed to be
Mm,
an arena for those that are achieving their goals and targets for the year.
mm,
And typically, a lot of people have fear as one of the obstacles that
mm,
kind of hinders them from achieving those goals and targets. And let me
mm.
just say up front, right? I'm excited about this because, again, you're a doctor, you're a professor, and I I have so many people around me that are doctors and professors. So I'm always keen to listen in to their presentation because, again, I believe that they're like top notch in the society. So it's a privilege for us to have you to come go
Thank
through
you.
this with
It's a pleasure
us.
to be here.
And I hope that our audience will gain from this interaction. So you're welcome once again. I'll
Thank you.
leave the detailed introduction to you just to talk about yourself a bit, and then we can
Okay.
dive into the topic.
Okay. That's fine. Um, so first and foremost, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in the Achievers Zone. Um, Jumping first into who I am, my name is Nicholas Allo. My doctoral, because again, you've referred to me as doctor. Yes, I am not a medical doctor, but an academic.
Right.
But I describe myself as one of the academics who've been very AWOL from being in the academia, though I still participate in the academia. My area of specialization from an academic standpoint is applied geography, and it focuses on being able to drive target marketing in developing countries. And I use Nigeria as my the base of my study, and that sort of brought me into a different realm of strategy as a whole. So technically, I consider myself as a geographer, but I'm a geographer with a strong bias towards strategy. And more importantly, I work within the field of digital and technology. And that sort of started out, which also brought me into geography in a little bit more of a detailed context, in the sense that when I was younger, I did uh, building and construction at the University of Lagos. But along the line, I used to see back then all these different films where you'd see people driving around with maps in the vehicle of the policeman and kind of thing. I'm thinking, how does that work? How does that work? So that sort of gave me a drive to explore. Plus the fact that I tried a bit of entrepreneurial work around technology when I was younger. Around shortly after I finished uni, I had a really massive opportunity well before the times of the likes of InterSwitch. If
Mm.
I had known what I needed to do from a technology standpoint and I hadn't been scared to explore,
Right. Right.
I would have been probably what Michel Elegbe is today. If I
Right.
had known what I if I know what I knew what I know now, if I knew it back then. But unfortunately I didn't. And for me, fear has been something that has sort of a problem, but also an opportunity. So
Mm.
it's been a problem because it tends to hold you back from being able to do certain things, and it
Right.
limits you and your capacity. And at some point, when I started working in the UK, um, it was one of the things that used to hold me back, right? Because again, you'd go
Mm.
to an event and you'd probably be the only black face. But when you
Mm.
speak with people, you find that you're the most qualified
Right.
mentally and from the skill set that's required. So it started to make me really ask questions that, okay, what exactly do I want to do? Why am I holding myself back? Right. So
Mm.
one of the things that it sort of made me understand is that you can either have two types of fear. You can have a fear that keeps you um, restrained and keeps you
Mm.
within the borderlines, or you could have a fear that helps to remind you of what are the challenges, grounds you, but
Mm.
prompts you to move forwards. So
Right.
this effectively has been how I've tied myself to overcoming fear, right? Not
Mm.
necessarily saying that there is no need to fear. There is a reason to fear because again, I'll give an
Right.
example. I'm scared to wits of snakes. I don't like snakes, right? Even though
Yeah.
you tell me a snake charmer and everything, I will never move near you if you have a snake with you, right?
Right.
But that's a
Right.
healthy fear because I know that my life is at risk. But then there are
Mm.
some fears that have unnecessary emotions attached to it, and the challenge
Right.
here is that, like I said to my son, actions and consequences, right? So
Mm.
for every action we take and for every emotional position we let that action, or rather we allow that action influence in us, it creates a
Mm.
consequence. So the question then becomes, where do you want to be in this field of the consequences you want to have to deal with?
Right. Right. So thank you for that. Before we jump in, I actually wanted to kind of highlight to the audience a bit of some level of background about how we met. I did that while I was, kind of presenting you as one of the guests coming in on for
Yes.
season 2. But I think it's a good story to just highlight to everyone. And we met in 2001 at the NYSC camp in Lagos, Nigeria, right?
Yes.
And you came in at the time. You were the chief commander in chief of the NYSC squad that
Yes.
was tied to the road safety unit, right?
Yeah.
And you came to camp looking for new recruits.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, one of the first things that got me was like, oh, okay, this handsome guy is a CIC. I need to be in road safety because I didn't like any of the other community development groups, to be honest with you. And I was like, okay, whatever I need to do, I need to join this group, And I met a couple of my uni friends that we were in the same orientation camp together. So we were
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm not doing any of this other community development stuff. I'm coming to road safety. And I know when I met you, we were conducting a test. You wanted to know if I knew, the laws and the rules for
Yeah.
driving and all the codes and everything, and also some level of physical push-ups, running back and forth, and all that. And at the time, I was, very tiny guy, not too physical and everything. But I just determined that, you know what, I'm gonna get in there. And it was just a nice way of, meeting you as a person that interviewed me. And
Yeah.
from there, I joined the team. I came to the road safety. I think it was in Ikeja at the time, the road
Yes.
safety
Yeah.
office.
Yes.
And then we
Obudu.
all came in as new recruits for road safety
Yeah.
for NYC.
Yeah.
And one of the key things you told me then, because you were about to leave, your set was leaving,
Yes.
and you basically encouraged me to be like, okay, you know what? From the things I've seen, you're a good guy. You can lead this team, and you encouraged me to join. At least put my heart in the ring. For
Yes.
the executive positions here and there. Unfortunately, I didn't get it, but just that discussion kind of put me on the path for leadership because prior to that, I've been a leader in different groups that I'm in church, voluntary stuff here and there. But I think that was where it actually started because at the end of the day, when you left, a new set came in and they were elected in, and I was elected as a head of a squadron. I still remember it's squadron 10. And then all of the squads now did an election and elected me as the head of all the squads. So we had 10
Wow.
squads. I was the head of squad 10, but also the head of all of the squads. So it
Oh
kind of
wow.
just positioned me right because I had to now plan our activities of where we're controlling traffic on our community
Wow.
development days and everything. I met a lot of people. It kind
Yeah.
of it
Yeah.
built me up from a leadership point of view in terms of how to lead people. And remember, it was NYSC. People were coming from all around the country,
Yeah.
and I had to manage them, manage how we do things. I still remember a couple of ladies then that would say, oh, Sheyi, we can't walk the distance, help us, and I'll call the guys together, we'll put in money and, order a cab so that they can go ahead of us and stand at different corners of the street. It was just amazing. And it was while I was writing that introduction that I remembered everything again and said, wow, you're actually one of the first set of people that said, okay, you know what, I see that leadership in you. Go ahead and, try and vie for that position. And I want to thank you for that because
Wow.
the rest is history, like they'll say, because starting with that, things, gelled for me. I was able to, improve my leadership skills and everything just kind of fell into place. So this
Wow.
is saying thank you way back for the things you did, the seed you planted, and how everything
Thank you.
germinated. So thank you so much.
Wow. I'm deeply honored. I've never heard the story. So to be honest, when I saw the story on your profile, and
Yeah,
I was remembering because again I keep remembering every time you see me, you say CIC. I'm like, oh, dude, those are the days that it's a long time gone. But when I now saw the story behind it, and I'm like, oh wow, um,
yeah,
this is this is touching. I'm really honored. Um, yeah, it's those. I mean, so again, and if you don't mind me quickly jumping into a bit of my own history in that regard,
yeah,
there was a
sure,
bit of fear as well when I was trying to vie for the position of CIC, right? And
right,
it was more or less a friend of mine. His name is Wale Oshune, who was with me in camp, and we found that we were probably one of the only University of Lagos boys who were in that group, and
mm,
the other boys from other schools had been sort of trying to take over the entire thing. And Wally goes, Allo, vie for this thing now, you know now. I'm like, guy,
mm,
how far that? Anyway, we had a bit of a debate, and then on the spot we agreed, and then on the spot we now went to meet some of our friends who were girls who we knew had influence, and said to them, look, I'm vying
right,
for this thing. Would you support me? And all of a sudden,
yeah,
a tsunami happened, and that's how I became the CIC. However, what I did realize, and I'm really grateful for you to remind me is that it changed the tone of how the NYSC group, which was with this the Road Safety Corps, had been organized. Because
Yeah.
apparently, when we got to meet with the commander in chief of the road safety, who was in charge of the entire country at some point in time,
Yeah.
just before we had you guys coming in, he said he had never had a road safety group that had been as responsible as my group. That
Wow.
every year, whenever the road safety group had come in, the monies were never properly accounted for that was
Mm.
meant to have been contributed by the team. There were always reports of people creating problems on the roads because people would claim to be part of FRSC and so many
Right.
other things that were terrible, which for me became a case whereby um, I started hunting for those who I thought would be the most appropriate, uh, those who would be most appropriate for succession, right?
Right.
And that's why I came across to you that look, you know what, um, you come across as someone who's very, very cranial, who's very um, particular about doing things right. So that was one of
Yeah.
the reasons why I approached you because again, um, I needed to find somebody who would ensure that the track record that we had created. Because to be funny enough,
Continue.
we are yeah well, I was actually told that um, I was awarded the NYSC Directors Award
Mm.
for what's it called for I can't remember what it was, but I was given a reward an award which never got to me apparently
Wow.
because the person
Okay.
who was in charge of my group, which which is another story again, had sat on whatever benefit was meant to come to me at that point in time. But for me, I
Wow.
think the most important thing in that whole experience, and again, this sort of reflects to my own leadership story as well, is that it made me understand that you do need to overcome fear. And why I
Mm.
say this is that at some point in time, the person who was in charge of my group for NYSC, from the NYSC, not from the FRSC end of things, had
Mm.
threatened to hold back some of my colleagues, and
Okay.
he was going to make them not get to um, participate in the personal parade. However,
Wow.
unfortunately for this guy, my team made me aware, and I was meant to go do the final accounting books with him a day or two before the personal parade period. And everybody was scared that these people aren't going to pass. So I asked for the list of everybody who was being held back from being able
Mm.
to pass out. And I asked them what exactly had happened. So I went around, I called each person, sort of get to know what was wrong. And for those who I knew, because again, those who were part of most of them that had the problem were those who were part of the FRSC group.
Right.
So
Okay.
I said to the accountant for the FRSC group to kindly help find out where we were from an accounting standpoint because we knew that the person who was in charge of us was siphoning money from the accounts.
Money. Okay. Okay.
So I said to her, do me two things, right? Do me a management account that shows everything and the monies that this man has taken, which was more than three
Mm-hmm.
quarters of the money we had contributed. And
Okay.
then do me a management account that shows that those monies are not taken, but have been recycled in one way or the other.
Right.
So I had those two accounts. So I went to go see the man in his house around Obanikuro. I'd never forget. So I got to
Mm.
his house. I saw him. He offered me a drink. I said I didn't want to drink. I said that I'm here to just give him the accounts, but that and I'd been scared out of my wits when I was going because again I was thinking myself, what exactly is going to happen with with the plan I have.
Mm.
And when I got to sit, when I sat with him, we both sat across on the table. He says, "Okay, so let me see the account." So I said to him before I show you the accounts, that let me quickly say something. I have two accounts. One account that is a management account that shows the money you've taken, which is three quarters of the money we've contributed. Which, if
Mm.
perchance, if you fail to release my colleagues who you've held down, I will make a call once I leave here and I will have it submitted to the commandant at the road safety group so that they are
Yeah.
aware and they will also submit it to the director at the NYSC.
Of
However,
the NYST.
there's a second account which I have here with me, which you can sign off on, which does not reflect the money you've taken.
Mm.
And the guy I could see the fear in the guy's eyes, right? But he wanted to be in control because again, I'm the one who's a young person. He's the one who's a grown man.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
goes, "Okay, I hear you," and he tries to keep a bold face and says, "Yeah, let's see what happens." Anyway, long and short, everybody in my platoon graduates. We do our POP,
Wow.
which means that he
Wow.
doesn't hold anybody back. So one of the ladies now comes to me, "I'm out, I'm out, I'm out, I'm out," and I smile because at the back of my mind, I know what we had done.
Right. Right.
So for
Awesome.
me, yeah,
Awesome.
so being able to get past the issue of fear
Mm.
was also one of the things that I'm hoping that I was able to sort of bring out there because again, if I had been scared and fearful, because everybody was fearful because the man had a pretty
Yeah.
bad reputation of making people stay back and everything. But yeah,
Right. Right. Okay, that's fantastic, and I think that leads us straight into the topic. So, let's
yeah,
run through your slide.
sure,
I'll be asking questions along the way,
yes,
and then I'll also refer to my post yesterday, which was like a
yes,
primer into this. So let's just
yes,
go into it.
yeah. So again, so this sort of gives us the next part of the presentation, which is what and why do we typically get scared? What causes fear? Because again, the different ways we can look at it. You can look at fear either from you being scared, which may be
Mm,
temporal, a moment of something,
right.
and it could be that it's something that is ingrained. So again, it's sort of it's important to understand where exactly or how exactly fear sort of starts to creep in into a person, and it's either through the experiences you've had or through the
Mm,
learnings we have, right? So
right.
from the example I gave with respect to the gentleman who was in charge of my NYSC group, it was from experience. Everybody had some form of interpersonal experience with him, and he had
Mm,
created some level of fear that everybody
yeah.
became aware of,
Mm,
right? In some scenarios, it's a personal thing whereby some personal experience, which is private to you, has created some form of fear, or it could be from the family that you're part of, where it may not necessarily be your nuclear family. It could be an extended family thing whereby people talk about, oh, this person in the family is this. Don't go and do. So
mm,
again,
mm,
fear starts to creep in through a lot of things. Or
right.
then it could be that something you've learned, right? Which um, if you have certain things, so for instance, I've given the example of me and my dislike for snakes, right? So those are my
Right.
triggers,
Yeah.
right? If it told
Mm,
me that they are reptiles, again, there are certain, as I say that, there are certain adages in Yoruba that are running through my head, and I'm thinking to myself, why on earth would I want to put myself near danger? So it sort of
right.
makes it important for you to look at that. And then there's also the subject of your emotions as well, right?
Mm,
Sometimes when you get in certain situations, your the level of fear you feel is heightened because, again, you're letting your emotions aggravate the fear you think you have, right? Which sometimes is
mm,
not necessarily a fear, but it's just something you think, and it's now exaggerated. So again, there's a need to know or understand that you need to rationalize your emotions in terms of
right.
why am I scared about this? What exactly is this? And then there's also the subject of, is it real? Is whatever you're scared of, is it real? I mean, I remember as a kid, there was the subject of Ojuju Kalaba, which again
Right.
is meant to scare kids to go back into the room and all that kind of stuff. So again, is it
Yeah.
real? Or is it just something apparent that people have created a story of? And I mean, there's so many stories, and it sort of starts to cause you to start to think to yourself, okay, so in this narrative I'm hearing, what am I in charge of? What do I control? Right? Because again,
Mm,
if you know what it is that you have access to, what it is that you're in control of, you can to some extent start to eliminate some of the things that cause you fear. Right. And that for
right.
me is one of the things that is very important. And by virtue of knowing what it is that you have a better grip of what the experiences are in terms of what causes you fear, then you start to determine if it's a flight or fight mode that you need to be. Do you
Right.
fight whatever it is
Right.
that is trying to create the fear in you, or do you take off?
Mm,
I mean, so for me, again,
mm,
if I use the example of snakes, it's straight away flight mode. I don't even try to think about, oh, should I try to if I
mm.
don't have the right weapon or the right ammunition to try to kill that thing,
Yeah.
don't even try
Yeah.
to be a strong man. Just there's no dignity lost in going in a flight mode when there's something that scares you, and you know that It is real. You know that you have rationalized your emotions. You know that you're not in control of that situation or scenario. There's nothing
Right.
absolutely wrong with taking off on your heels to get away. And then, more
Yeah.
importantly, if you're trying to look at it from what you're trying to do, right? What do you want to achieve? How do you want to achieve it? So, bringing
Mm.
it back down to the subject of what we do as human beings, right?
Right.
What next? What do you want to do? What's the next thing? What's the next step? What's the next process? What's the next scope of requirements that you need to? So again, these are the things that in my mind we
Mm.
need to be aware of, right? When
Mm.
it comes to trying to deal with the subject of fear, and
Mm.
in trying to deal with that subject of fear, it becomes critical that you need to understand what exactly is fear itself, right? And
Mm.
if we look at trying to define fear, so I've tried to look at two different approaches to fear, right? One is an academic definition, and the other one is a faith-based definition.
Right.
The academic definition tries to make it very, very what's the word? Contextual, right? Which
Right.
is
Yeah.
looking at it as an unpleasant emotion, again, which goes back to the subject of rationalizing emotion or thought that a person would typically have when they're worrying that something dangerous, painful, or bad might happen, right? And
Mm.
that's the definition you would typically get from the Cambridge Dictionary. Now, the faith-based definition I got when I was much younger, and it came through Pastor Taiwo Dukoya, God rest his soul. So he's someone I grew up
Yeah.
under, listening to, and he has molded my faith journey as a person.
Mm.
And for him,
Right.
he described it, and is the first person I ever heard say that false evidence appearing real.
Mm. Mm.
And if you think about it, we go back to the subject of apparent or reality, right?
Right.
Terms of what exactly are you scared of? Is it real or is it
Mm.
something that looks there? Um, it also looks at the subject of uh, how do you rationalize your emotions as well? Because again, if something is false, right, you know it doesn't
Mm.
exist, but it looks real, right?
So
So
real. Yeah.
it will play on your emotions, it will play on your thinking, it will play on everything that you have that makes sense to you. It would play on it, and it would cause you to struggle, right, to
Mm.
know and be who it is that you want to be. And one of the challenges that this then creates is that it creates a situation whereby you're never thinking clearly or thinking straight, right?
Mm.
And this is the this and again, you know, so as I was trying to do this research again, it sort of brought some interesting context, which is the way the people in the UK call it and the way the people in the US call it. So in the UK it's fear, and in the
Right.
US it's fear. So again, I
Right.
mean, I just I thought that was quite an interesting differentiator in terms of
Mm.
everything. But
Okay,
again,
so I have a couple of comments on
sure,
this,
please,
right?
yes, go on.
And it just while you were talking, I just remembered a couple of things that happened to me. So, growing up in our
Yes,
typical setting back home, they drum this fear into you, and I say the drum because it was
yes,
an intentional thing where they
yes,
tell you that, oh, you can't go to swim, you can't go to the river to swim, people
yes,
drown, blah
yes,
blah 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 blah,
yes, yes,
and
yes, yes.
over the years, I had that fear of water, of swimming,
Yep,
because I've
yep,
heard over and
yep.
over again, don't even stand next to the pool. Don't do this. So it has been in my mind for so long. However, in my wife's family, they love swimming because it was just like, oh, it's just water now. She can jump
Mhm,
in and hold her
mhm.
breath and everything. But for me, it was fearful that how will I jump into water? So while we were staying in Ghana, we had our son then, and I told myself, my wife and I had a discussion. I'm like, you know what? We're not going to pass this fear over to our son. So
Yeah,
she would be the one to take him, to the swimming pool. So he started
yeah,
swimming when he was 2 years old. We took him to the pool.
fantastic.
But me, the grown-up dad, I'll be like, no, I'll just stand from afar. So it got to a point I had to tell myself, I said, guy, you need to do something about this. So while they go to swim, I now employed another coach in another swimming pool far from the house.
Yes,
I go there every morning, and it was that person that now taught me how to swim. And one of the
yeah,
first things we did for the first 6 or 7 lessons, I'll just sit down at the edge of the pool, put my leg inside water. He too will do the same thing. I will just start talking. And he would say, look, it's just water, don't worry about it. Then he started
Yeah.
telling me about the physics of, how you can float in water, the different laws and everything. And while I was doing that, I was just playing. My legs were in the water, flapping and everything. And then after a while, I'll be like, okay, can you just stand in the water? Okay, so I'll stand. You'll be like, you see, nothing happened to you. Okay, put your face in 10 seconds. So I'll count to 10, come out, you'll be like, can you see? Then we started doing 20 seconds, 30
Yeah.
seconds until I was comfortable. And then he says, okay, we'll stay on the shallow side, try and lie flat. Don't think about anything, relax yourself. You will see
Yeah.
that you float. And I was like, I'm an engineer, for goodness sake. I studied physics, so I should know these things. But over time, with the information it provided for me, I was able to overcome that fear. Now
Fantastic.
I swim very well. Guess
Yes.
what? My mother, when she sees me in the swimming pool, she still has the fear that, what are you doing inside? Because she came to visit recently, and all of us went to the swimming pool, my son, myself, everybody, because everybody in the family swims now. But she
Yes.
still stands on the edge and she's like, no. And that's because she still has that fear. She
Yes.
doesn't have the knowledge,
Yes.
to overcome it. And she still
Yes.
feels, no, me and swimming pool, no. Now I
Yes.
have been able to overcome it. And I realized that swimming is actually a very good exercise. It's actually
Yes.
the only exercise that you do that exercises your
Every
entire
muscle of your
body.
body. Yes.
So I was denied, enjoying that because of what has been drummed in my mind. So I just wanted to, bring that in because again, that was something that came from a family point of view. It
Yes.
became personal for me because every now and then they give us examples of children that have died, in a swimming pool, blah blah blah. So all I had was if I jump in like this, I'm dead. Until I found someone that was able to give me enough knowledge to overcome that fear. And now I swim perfectly.
Fantastic. So, you've actually just given a perfect example of learned or taught fair,
Right.
right? And that's from the point of view of what we get indoctrinated into in terms of what we are learned, either directly or indirectly from a structured learning process. Again, as a child,
Yeah.
we are structured into learning from either our home or from a school.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that sort of facilitates the curricula that we are exposed to. And then there are things
Mm.
that over times people who have had these fears of their own now inculcate this fear into you and indoctrinate you into that mentality of fear. And interesting thing is that you and I have we had a relatively similar scenario in the sense that so as a young person I had an uncle who's a professor, who would
Right.
take all of us, myself, my siblings, and his own kids to country club to go swim, to go learn,
Right.
teach us to swim.
Right.
And we were all learning to swim. And I can't remember exactly what it was as a child that all of a sudden, all I had learned to swim and everything disappeared because of a fear of the deep side,
Mm. Right.
right? And for many years, that used to plague me. And at some point in time, whilst just before I started my doctoral course, I decided to take a very extreme measure to deal with an extreme fear. I went to go
Mm.
learn scuba
Right.
diving.
Right.
I went to learn scuba diving as a way. And one of the things that I told the coach who was teaching me to scuba was that I had this fear of the depth and everything. So he always tried to help me through the process. So one of the mornings, or rather one of the evenings when we were doing the scuba training process, um, we were meant to just swim in the deep end and everything.
Mm.
And we had finished all we were doing, and I was now playing in the pool, right? All the
Right.
processes and everything, all the equipment were off me. And he then calls out to me from the other end of the pool, Nicholas, Nicholas. And I turn around and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I thought you were scared of the deep end. And I'm like, yeah. As in, well, I mean, what are you talking about? I'm scared of deep end. I've never
You're
go
in
to
the
the deep.
deep end.
Now points to me to take a look at. I was in the middle of the deep end
Wow.
of the pool and I was floating.
Wow. Right. Right.
So straight away, brrr, once that consciousness gets, but again, that now reminded me that hang on, this thing is self-inflicted,
Correct. Yeah.
right? So um from the viewpoint of what it is that we indoctrinate ourselves into, what it is that becomes the culture of the people that we're either part of or we become part of, what it
Mm.
is that so again, some fears are I mean, so I remember as so again, you need to forgive me about this example, but my father, when I was younger, my father would say that if you touch a girl, she will get pregnant, right? Which was meant to be from a morality standpoint. But again, then as a kid,
Right.
you're thinking, oh, I have to. But again, there's so many things that you get to learn, which unfortunately, when you try to understand, it creates fear rather than
Mm.
teach you the right process to some of these things. And then the other challenge here becomes that when you try to understand or get the ontology with respect to why do you fear, as in what makes you
Right.
fear, what causes you to
Yeah.
fear, right? That then starts to bring the experiential context into things as well.
Mm.
Because again,
Mm.
if you are scared because someone has said something, there will be something that has happened in your case that
Right.
reinforces that fear, right? So there's
Correct.
a personal
Yeah.
context, or maybe someone or something has happened that you've seen, which makes that
Mm.
fear even worse for you, because then you have this fear and you're thinking, oh, this is what it is, and you've observed it. Or maybe someone has shared his or her own experience whereby, oh,
Experience.
this almost happened, and rather than telling you what was that happened that made them get to that point where they had that fear, they simply share
Mm.
with you what it is that created that fear and why that fear is, which then exaggerates it. So again, a lot of
Right.
times,
Right.
right, fear is more or less what people have communicated over time or gotten you comfortable with, right?
Right.
And yes, again, like I said before, it's important to understand the context behind the fear, but it's also important to know why the fear is. So again, this is why it's important to have the rationale behind why that fear is there, which you then understand what exactly it is that causes or
Mm.
makes you scared in the first place. But then it's also important to understand what fear does to you as a person, right? And how it
Right.
starts to
Right.
affect. Because again, if you're trying to go on a journey whereby you're trying to overcome certain fears to achieve certain things, then you need to know what does that fear have as an effect on you. And I mean, one of the things that my working with startup founders, right? So I do a lot of stuff with entrepreneurs, and I was
Mm.
speaking yesterday with one of the founders that I work with and I mentor in a way, and we had a bit of a debate back and forth, right? And
Mm.
one of the reasons why the debate was that we were both trying to work out um, with her and bring her to a point whereby she understands that she has what she needs to do what she needs to do,
Right.
but
Right.
always trying to find a reason why she can't do it now, which is the procrastination part
Mm.
of it,
Okay.
is
Yeah.
to fit. Because again,
Right.
if if you know what you're capable of, if you know how you're capable of it, and um, you learn from the things you see around you, you start to realize that the things that you're scared of may not actually be as fearful as you think they are. You've just
Right.
exaggerated those things in your mind, and it's
Right.
restraining you and putting you in a comfort zone. Because the thing
Mm.
about fear is that it puts you into a comfort zone, right? It
Mm.
makes it impossible for you to make a decision. You're indecisive. You're never able to
Right.
make a firm decision on, okay, I want to do this. But if I do it, what happens? Or yes, again,
Mm.
and one of the things. So one example that I can't remember who it was I learned it from, right? Had to do with so this was when I was much younger. I wasn't married then, and I was much. I think it was either I think it was secondary school actually. So it was a case
Okay.
of you're trying to ask a girl out, right? And you're thinking to yourself, if I ask her, what if she gives me no? That's like I would like a question kind of thing. And then one of my friends said to me that if she gives you no, what
That's
happened?
yeah.
That's the end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
it.
you move on. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's a way to look at it. So that became a way of rationalizing the issue, and
Mm.
it became, and this is a bit of a joke now. So it became so terrible a way of thinking for me that if perchance back then when I was younger, if I asked the girl out and the girl goes, "Oh, let me think about it," I'll be like, you know what? Forget I ever asked you. Don't worry that I asked you. Don't forget. I'm like, how? Why?
Right.
I should like, why? But let me think. I'm like, no, see, I won't have asked you if I didn't
Mm.
think it through in the first place. right? So it
Right.
became to the
Right.
point whereby some people started to say that I was arrogant. I'm like, no, I'm
Wow.
not
Okay.
arrogant. I've gotten to the point whereby I've learned to take control of certain things. I understand what it is that I want. I have
Mm.
monitored, I have been able to take a look at what's apparent and what's real. I've been able to
Right.
rationalize my emotions on this thing. It's not a case of, oh, I assume the girl likes me, why I'm asking. I know she likes me, why I'm asking her. And I know you like me, is why I'm asking you. Right. So
Right.
if
Right.
I like you and you like me, and we both understand where we are, then why the games of saying that, oh, let me think about it? What are you thinking about? It's like me asking a girl,
Mm.
oh, marry me, and I'm holding the ring and I saying to me, well, let me think about it. I'll close the
Let me
cap and
think
say, you know
about
what?
it. Don't forget it.
So,
So I mean, the thing is that is a very good example. I have a couple of examples, as well. But again, I wanted to zero in back to what you were talking about in terms of
yes,
the effect of that when it comes to
yes,
you trying to achieve something. And
correct.
procrastination is there, and
Yes,
indecisiveness as
yes,
well. Because
yes.
look at it, it's the start of the year. Today is day 20 of 366 because it's a leap year this year, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Some people have set some goals to say, okay, I'm going to start going back to the gym. I actually saw
yes,
a funny post by someone that says, oh, the first 2 weeks of January, you go to the gym, is full, people are doing stuff and all that and all that. But check it out in March, and you
yep,
realize that 99% of everybody that started have fizzled out one way or the other.
yep,
Now, it might not be
yep,
because of fear, but it might just be because they're not committed to it.
correct.
I know a friend of mine who was committed to reducing his weight, but he
Okay,
was scared about the process. And
right.
again, I told him then that, look, you need to just start, just take
Yeah,
one step,
yes,
and then take the next step and be consistent about it. In fact, it
yes,
got so bad that he told his wife about it, that, okay, you know what, every morning I'm going to get out and jog around the estate, his estate.
yes,
But
yes.
he will wake up and go outside and sit with the security guard outside for 1 hour. He won't do anything. When he's coming inside, he will just pour water on his face and come back. you know, and he did that for a while. He had to confide in me to say, look, I'm just scared. I don't know. As in, seeing me jogging, what will people say? And I said, you know what? People will say you have taken control of your life because you know for a fact that it is unhealthy for you to have this kind of weight on
Yes,
yourself.
yes.
So just start. And then I told him something particular. I said, you know what? Get someone else in the estate that can be your accountability partner.
Accountability partner, correct.
So
Yes,
if you don't wake up on time, that person comes to knock your gate and says, come on, let's go. And then
let's
you
go.
can
Yeah,
do the same for that person as well.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
what I try, because we talk a lot about achieving goals and things like,
Mm-hmm,
and that's what we
mm-hmm.
did. And just having that with the fact that he's no longer scared of, oh, what will people say when they see his
Yes,
big body, big frame just jogging on the street. Now he has done it for so long that he's getting back on track. He's losing so much weight.
fantastic,
He's feeling,
fantastic.
fantastic about himself and all that. So what I was going to highlight was to zero this back to the effects of fear when it comes to achieving a
Correct,
goal or a target, especially for
correct,
the year.
correct. And you know what? Part of what you've indirectly reflected on is the issue of diminished self worth. A lot of times
Right.
that we all
Mm,
tend to feel when we have a fear, because again, we try to validate what is wrong
mm.
as normal, right?
Right,
Not knowing that
right.
we're holding ourselves back. And in some cases, we get defensive. So we're either
Right.
aggressive or timid about certain things where we don't want someone to challenge us on what we are scared of, or we
Mm,
get anxious, right? Or we reflect and have panic attacks whereby you're saying to someone, yeah, but you can do it. What? So again, these things are the effects of fear, which a lot of times we don't acknowledge. And that, I think,
mm,
is the biggest problem of these things, whereby because we refuse to acknowledge that this is fear that is causing this, we are stagnated. We're unable to
right,
move forward. We're unable to get
right.
past wherever it is that point in our life has grounded us in. So we get comfortable
Mm,
with it, right? And because we've gotten comfortable with it, we're thinking of it as, yeah, I mean, there's no big deal about it, but there is a big deal about it. That big deal is that
there is.
we need to move, right? And this
Right.
brings us to the subject of fight or flight.
Right.
right? And the issue here is that when you fight, right, you fight against what it is that is trying to hold you down, and
Hold you
you're
down.
not trying to let it hold you down. You're trying to decipher what exactly are these things that are
Mm.
causing this fear, and it's a case of it becomes a fuel for you to move yourself to the next point. But flight, a
Right.
lot of times, when that flight scenario comes, it's a case of, I'm not trying to think this, so I'm not trying to do this. You take a position, right? And that
Yeah.
position makes it a case whereby, or makes a case for you, whereby you have what's called impetuous strength. Now, impetuous strength is something that I learned again in my younger days. I used to do martial arts. I did karate, then I did taekwondo, but they teach you about
Okay.
impetuous strength in karate. And it's about you being able to deal with people. Right. So a person who has impetuous strength is somebody who believes that because he's bigger than you or he's more bulkier than you, he can hurt you. Right. So
Right.
that's false. That's a strength that is based on a false narrative.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
Now, when you have fear, you have that impetuous strength because you validate what it is that is not right, but because you
Right.
don't want to move away from that point because you've gotten comfortable there. That fear has
Mm.
caused you to stay there. It's caused you to stagnate at that point. It's caused you to get comfortable with where you are, right? So, from an achieving standpoint, if perchance you've achieved a certain point, and this is something I do regularly, right, with people who I mentor from a professional standpoint here in the UK. And like I said much earlier
Right.
in the conversation, that at some point I used to be the only black person who would go to an event, right? And that used to
Mm.
cause me to be worried. But
Right.
when I got over that worry, it made me take certain decisions that made me move away from working where I worked to standing and setting up my own business, right? It's not been
Right.
easy, but
Mm.
it's exposed me to a lot more opportunities, right? And not being comfortable, right, with where I was also prompted me to do my doctoral degree, and it caused me to
Right.
take a look at some of the things that um, the flight mode of fear had often
Mm.
ingrained in me, in the sense that there's always an exaggerated context of what is and what isn't, right? But again, like I said to people, the scenarios that operate in Africa are the same scenarios that operate here in the West, in
Right.
the UK and in
Right.
the US, wherein there's a massive demand or a massive need for you to have a network of people, and those network of people typically move you forward. But more importantly, knowing what you know and focusing on what you know to do what you need to do takes out a
Mm.
lot of all the noise that will typically hinder you from being able to move forwards. And then
Right.
there's also the issue of procrastination as well, right? In the sense that you're constantly thinking, yes, I want to do this. Okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. Again,
Mm.
that
Mm.
tomorrow. Again, there's a phrase that was always said as a kid. I'm not sure who was. I think it was my dad who used to say it. Tomorrow never comes,
Right. Yeah.
right? Because you will always find some reason or the other to move yourself to another day, to move that goal to another day, to not necessarily say,
Mm.
okay, look, Lord, let's try to deal with this situation now. Let's eat the frog and let's just get on with
Mm.
it. We never
Yeah.
want to do
Yeah.
that because again, you're
Right.
always trying to keep yourself in where you're comfortable with from a viewpoint of fear. And then there's also the subject of inflated self-worth, right?
Mm.
Particularly for those who are bullies, right?
Mm.
But in truth, the person who is a bully, majority of the time, is a person who is scared,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because something has happened and something has caused him or her pain. He or she, to overcome that experience of fear, decides to
Yeah.
hose themselves on people, right? So
Mm.
there's this
Mm.
inflated mentality of, oh, I'm better than you, or I have more money
Right.
than you. Yeah, but if you
Right.
do have more money than me, then I mean, I'm not asking you to tell me. It's not my problem if you
Yeah.
have more. Are you happy?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? So again, there are so many things that unfortunately people don't realize that they practice at the moment,
Mm.
which is more or less down to fear because it's grounded them and anchored them into a position.
Mm. So let,
Now,
let me let me let me let me come in here just before you
yeah,
move
sure.
ahead. So we've been able to establish what fear is, right, by the
Yes,
definition, and I
yes,
like the fact that you looked at it from the academic and from the faith perspective.
yes,
Okay, and we also looked at the effect of fear on us in terms
yes,
of, okay, the impact, procrastination and things like that.
yeah,
But I'm sure someone in the audience will be looking at, okay, you know what, you've defined this. How do I go about overcoming this fear? What are the things that I need to
right,
do, practical steps that would help me overcome this? Like I said, it's 20 days into the year. I've set some
yes,
targets, but again, I have obstacles because I'm fearful. I don't know how to
hmm
go about it. Maybe I want to write an exam. Maybe I want to do a second degree.
hmm
Maybe I want to save a particular amount of money or launch out to start my
hmm
own business and resign
hmm
from work. There
hmm
is also this fear of the unknown.
yes,
And the way it is, if you look at all of the reports about the outlook of 2024,
it
I was
is.
talking
It
about
sounds
VUCA.
grim. Yeah.
It's so much uncertainty. Everything is complex, ambiguous, it's so
hmm
volatile. Nobody can tell you for a fact what's going to happen. So I wanted us to drive in that direction. I know you mentioned, I've seen fuel, and I know
Yes,
you said something about using your fear as a
as
fuel
a field.
now
Correct.
yeah,
Yes.
to spur
Yeah.
you on. So
Yeah.
if we can just go in that direction as because we have like 10 minutes to go. So
I realize that as well. So I'll try to quickly run through as quickly as possible. So there are three key areas or three key things that you need to look at when you're
right,
looking at fear as fuel, right? So the first part is
right,
propulsion, right? And this, what exactly is your call to action? What exactly do you want to deal with, right? So
mm,
when you try to get to that point, you need to quickly assess what exactly are the issues that you need to do. What is the problem you want to solve, right? When you're looking at
right,
yourself, when you're trying to address fear as fuel, because again, like I said, the fear needs to be able to move you forward, needs to be able to cause you to take
correct,
certain action, which is where the subject
yeah,
of propulsion comes into play and moving you to moving forward. And then it also prompts you to be cautious, right? Because again,
mm,
one of the things that you get to understand with fear as fuel is that you want to proceed, but proceed with caution. So you're not being
caution,
impetuous, right? You're not
right,
being
yeah,
you're not being overly self you're not looking at yourself beyond what it is. You're being sensible. What exactly
mm,
is what I want to do? What are the options I have, and what's the consequence
right,
of the option I'm taking? And
right,
from what it is that I have been dealing with, what are the active learnings? What exactly are the things that um, I have been able to understand from this that
mm,
um, make it clear what is real and what is apparent, right?
right,
What exactly is the issue? What am I Why am I
mm,
scared of this thing? What are the
mm,
consequences, right? And then what are
mm,
the patterns that I can identify, right? How those
yeah,
patterns validated? Did it happen before? Has it happened
mm,
recently? And this sort of takes
right,
one back to the subject of the faith-based approach to looking at fear, because again, a lot of times
right,
the things that we are scared of, and because we are scared of it and because we dwell on that fear, it creates a
mm,
pattern. It creates a situation whereby it will repeat itself. And there are
right,
certain things that you will get taught from a faith standpoint, whereby how you deal with those patterns and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's important to understand that there are patterns that are part of that process. And then there's also the fact that there's a need for you to fact verify, right? What exactly
mm,
is true? What is false? Right?
mm,
Um, within what's true, within what's false, where am I directed in terms of what I'm trying to do?
mm,
Am I going or have I been going in the direction of what's false because of what I'd known or what I know, right? And then
right,
complicity in the sense of have I been complicit in that process? Because again, sometimes in as much as we are dealing with subjects of fear, right? A lot of
mm,
times we're complicit because we know what the truth is, but we don't want
right,
to face the truth,
mm,
right? So the question here then becomes: are you willing to face the truth? Because when you unmask fear, a lot of what is behind that fear is your decisions to not get past the fear,
mm, mm,
particularly if you're trying to achieve a certain goal, irrespective of whatever the goal may be, either academic,
right,
either financial. either a career in whichever direction. Again,
Mm,
there's a complicit stand that we take in that, and there's also the subject of self-governance, in the sense that if you know that what you're doing is going to create a situation whereby it's creating fear for you, what are you doing
mm,
to address that subject? Right?
right,
What are the learnings
right.
you're taking from this experience? How are you trying to reinvent yourself? Right? There's
Mm,
something that some gentleman growing up, who I will always respect. Um, so growing up, one of the things he said to me is that as a young man, after you're born, there's a need to rebirth yourself,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
And the challenge that we have for many young men is that beyond the birth, the first birth that that young man has had, he or she has refused to rebirth themselves into who they want
Second
to be,
time.
right?
Mm,
And
mm,
because that rebirth now means that some of the things that you've learned, you need to unlearn them, right? And we
absolutely.
often find people using the narrative of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yes, you can teach an old dog new tricks. The old dog needs to be
Absolutely.
willing to learn those new tricks,
Absolutely. Yeah,
right? So if that
absolutely.
old dog realizes that those new tricks will help it survive, it will learn them. So why stop yourself at
Absolutely.
trying to learn those tricks? So again, we
Mm,
need to learn. And the one thing I would always respect my dad for, right? My dad is he's deceased now. He's been gone for about 9 years. I think it's probably going to be
well,
10 years this year, actually. Yeah. But
okay.
one of the things for me that makes me respect him in particular is that he took out time in his late 60s to go learn programming, to write
Wow.
an application that he was using
Wow.
for his profession as a surveyor, wherein all he
Wow.
needed to then do was do the survey work, get the records of the survey, and input it into the application he built, and it would automatically run out a cadastre for him,
Wow.
right? And when he was telling me about it, initially I was thinking, yeah, right, yeah, right. And when he showed it to me, I was blown away,
Wow.
right? And immediately he's able to check and find errors in what's called a triangulation, which is what you do when you're doing the survey. But again, this is just letting you understand where the issue of self-governance comes in, whereby you learn
Mm,
and know how to
mm,
overcome what it is that might have been a fear for you. Because again, this was someone who was in his late 60s. I mean,
mm,
he's doing that at that point in time where people will argue, and then you I mean, there are many stories out there, right? Just from the
mm.
viewpoint of self-governance. Now, and this takes us
So,
to the
so,
point that
so hold on. Before you go to this next step, I think I want to
yeah,
make a couple of comments about what you just said. So, there's this. I can't remember who said it, but I think there's a statement that says that the illiterate of the 21st century is not someone that can't read a book, but is someone that cannot unlearn and
mm,
relearn.
mm,
That those will be, the illiterates of the 21st century, because
I agree.
every time things are changing, you need to, just like you said, rebirth yourself, you
Yes,
know, unlearn some things, learn new things, and keep
yes,
learning. I always
correct.
tell people in my team that I work with at work that learning is a continuous process.
Yes,
You stop learning the day you die, but as long as you're
correct.
alive, you have an opportunity to keep learning. And I always
Correct.
tie it to the growth mindset. Some
Yes,
people have a fixed mindset, but there is the concept of a growth mindset where I see myself that there is nothing I cannot learn. There's
correct.
no new skill that I cannot add to
Yes,
myself.
correct.
In modern terms, now everybody is scared of AI, artificial intelligence, and they're saying
Yep,
AI will take your
yep.
job and things like that. Maybe
Uh-huh.
at one level. But I was listening to a podcast
Mm,
because I'm a project manager, I'm a program manager.
yes,
So I,
yes,
I, I need to learn on a regular
yes,
basis. And there was
yes,
this podcast that the guy said that it's not only AI that will take your job, it is someone that knows how to use AI that will
yes,
take your job.
yes,
So that point of view on learning and relearning new things is really, really important. And
yes.
I just wanted to highlight that. Second thing is I have an example I want to give you about overcoming fear.
Mm,
Um, Again, everybody is afraid sometimes, when you are flying in an airplane and you get into
mm,
turbulence and all of that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It got to a point for me personally, I was like, okay, you know what? I need to read more about the safety precautions of an airplane and the
mm,
things they do, to certify that this airplane is ready to go and all of that. And I watched a bunch of videos that showed me those safety things. They drive the airplane with one engine sometimes. Sometimes they go down and go up, and test all those, turbulence things before they certify it. It was when I saw all of those things that I told myself, you know what? There's no need to fear. In fact, they said that flying by air is the safest means of transportation in the world right now,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
better than traveling on the road.
True.
So I had to pump myself with all of that information so that with that information in me, I can respond accurately now. So sometimes, even when I'm in the plane, I usually have a book I'm reading. So I'm plugged in with AirPods, I'm listening to music while I'm reading. So anytime it's happening, I'm just like, yeah, okay. Firstly, yes, I have faith in God, right? But I also back that up with the knowledge that I have based on the things I've read. And I like the fact that, just like I said earlier, you looked at this from two perspectives, the academic side with the definition, and also the faith side. And
Mhm.
just to highlight, from a faith point of view, right, the response to fear is faith.
Yes.
And the Bible says that, faith comes by hearing and hearing the word of God.
By the word
So it
of
also
God.
boils down to you doing some research and gaining
Yeah.
some knowledge for you to be able to have confidence, which
Yeah.
builds up your faith to
Yeah.
respond to fear. So
Correct.
on both sides, whether
Yeah.
academic or faith, you still need to have knowledge. You still need to have the word
Correct.
of God. You still need to have
Correct.
some knowledge about that thing to booster yourself to be able to
Yeah.
respond to that
Yeah.
faith. I mean, to that
Yeah.
fear scenario.
So, I mean, to be honest, what you've said is the icing on the cake of everything, in the sense that
Right.
a lot of times we dwell on what we think we don't have, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
what we think we can't do, and
right.
what we think is impossible, right?
Mm,
And I'll give an example, right, with respect to what we think is impossible. So, in one of the ventures I got involved with many years back, I was telling a friend who worked in technology about
mm,
the what seemed like the idea, but was what I was actually doing. And this person was saying, it's impossible, you can't do it. And
mm.
I'm like, no, but it's possible. They're like, no, I'm telling you, you can't do it, it's not possible. And I said to the person, okay, do you want to listen to me? And the person goes, yes, I'm listening. And the person was rather aggressive with the response. I'm like, it is what I'm actually doing right now.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the person goes, oh. So I asked
Wow.
the question again, do you think it's possible? He
Mm.
said, yeah, already doing it. Why are you asking me? Now, the point, the point I'm trying to bring out here is there's also the need for us to know who to go to when you are dealing with a fear.
Right. Right.
Because the challenge you tend to have is that a lot of people will attempt to propel their fears to you as a
Right.
response to how to you to deal with a fear,
Mm, mm,
right? Because at the end of the day, for some people, right, who might look like they might be successful, and let me even use myself now. There are some fears I
mm,
have, right? But I'm
mm,
trying and I'm doing everything to unlearn some of those fears, right? Now, if somebody comes to me and asks me a question based on an area where I have my fears, my response to the
mm.
person would be that, look, you know what? I'm not probably the best person to answer this,
To answer.
right?
Right.
But this is what, or this is how I would have dealt with it.
Mm,
Because I've learned, like I said, I've learned to overcome my fears, and I'm learning every day to overcome my fears, right?
mm.
And I would say that there are a limited number of things I still have fear of, right? And one of them, I'm happy to keep that fear, which is the fear of reptiles, right?
Okay.
But outside of that, in terms of um, engaging with people and doing
Mm,
things, let me give an example, right, of a fear that I overcame, and from the viewpoint of trying to achieve something. So I'm
right.
not a football person, right? I'm not very big on football. However, at the point when Manchester United was trying to sell, was it Manchester? Yeah, yeah. That's no, not Manchester United. Chelsea, rather. Chelsea. So
Okay.
Chelsea was owned by Abramovich, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I spoke with a friend of mine, and I said to him, oh wow, they're trying to sell Chelsea. That let's try to find out what we can do. If see if we can buy or at least create a group to buy into
Mm,
Chelsea. And the guy
mm.
goes, buy Chelsea. Are you mad? And I'm like, dude, what's the big deal about it? He goes, no. Anyway, that if you do it, if you
Mm,
get a headway, I will join you. I'm thinking myself, okay, no problem. So I go into the process of trying to find out who are the managers of the
right.
transaction. And I find out
Mm,
it's some company in the US. So I call the company. I say to them that, okay, what exactly is the deal with respect to you're trying to sell Chelsea? And they explain to me. And I said to them, okay, so what do I need to do to put in a bid and everything?
mm,
And they tell me. And we get into a conversation and they send me an email that sort of registers me and my interest in Chelsea.
right.
And I share that with my friends that, okay, let's try to see if we can raise money for this. One of them
Mm.
calls me up and says, Ibuliti Ferry. So again, forgive me for speaking over here. But Ibuliti
Yeah, yeah.
Ferry, Ibuliti Ferry, how much was it that we're trying to look for? I think it was like 250 million pounds. Ibuliti
Wow.
Ferry. I'm like, that look, that at least the first fact that we've gotten past the
First,
registration
yeah,
part. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
let's think about it. Anyway,
yeah.
long and short of it is I couldn't get people who believed enough to go that
Mm,
route. But for me,
mm,
I achieved something, which was that people said it was impossible, right?
yeah.
But I made it clear that it's not impossible to get involved, right?
Mm,
I got involved
mm,
in that Chelsea bid process, right? Unfortunately, I didn't have the right people to back the bid.
yeah.
But if I had, and again, I'm not a football person, so I would have been dealing with it purely from a strategy and a business standpoint, which I don't
Business
think a lot of
point. Yeah.
footballers would like, right? Because again, people always say you have to be a football person, you have to be a whatever it is, and for me,
Passionate about. Yeah.
yeah, and for me, I'm just passionate about trying to break the jinx of what people were saying, and it was more or
Yeah.
less because somebody said it was not possible. It was why I said let's
Mm,
make it possible. So
right.
where am I going with
Right.
this? It's possible to achieve the goals you want to achieve, right? It's possible to go past what people say is impossible. It is possible
Mm,
to break the jinx, right? But to do some of these things, there are certain things you need to do. One is, what exactly do you have available to you? What are the resources you have? Do you need to
right.
own the resources? Or if you don't own the resources, do you need to find people who own those resources? And
Or
how do you then
collaborate with
now
those.
correct?
Right.
How do you
Yeah.
collaborate with them? How do you build what exactly it is you need to build? Then you need to understand what are the dependencies that you have. Who do you need to
Mm,
depend on, or what do you depend on? And if you don't need to depend on anything, what are the external dependencies that will affect what you need to
right.
do, right? And then from there, okay, what works? What doesn't work? Right? You've
Mm,
done this before. It didn't work for you. Okay, so fine. So this doesn't work. So what
change
is the next
something.
step? Right. So
Right.
again, you need to now start looking at it from the viewpoint of okay, what worked, what doesn't work. If this didn't work before, this dependency didn't work. Okay, so this collaboration didn't work. Don't complain or moan about it not working. What next? Move to the next thing.
Mm,
Right. And then
mm.
do you want to go at it alone or do you want to go at it with people? Again, there are many
People
stories whereby people say that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you
go
want to go
alone.
far,
Far.
go
Yeah.
with people.
Go people.
Right.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
other thing here is that there are also conversations where people speak about in life, it's either a marathon for some or it's a sprint. If it's a sprint, then you
Mm,
don't see the things around you. But if we make it a
right.
marathon, then you get to see a lot more and experience a lot more.
Correct.
So the question then
Experience a
becomes,
lot.
what exactly do you want to do? Right. And then
Mm,
more importantly, it's important to also be able to get yourself to a point whereby you know when to start and when to stop.
mm, right.
Right. So for me, if I use the Chelsea experience, right, because I mean, and it's again, it's very liberating, and I'll explain why I say it's liberating. Right, at the point when you're being told something is impossible for a billion or for I think it was a quarter of a billion pound
Quarter of
deal,
a billion. Mm,
right, and all of a sudden you find that things people have said are not possible, you've now made it possible. All of a sudden,
right.
boom, there's a new level of self-worth that you see to yourself,
Yes. Correct.
right? Because you realize that the things people have been saying was not possible is possible. It's just the
Mm,
person who's made it impossible
Mhm.
for himself. So it changes your the view you have of yourself, the view you have of what you want to achieve, and how you look at yourself going forward, right?
Mm.
And then you also, more importantly, you need to set your time scales, right? In terms of how much time do I need for this? If this doesn't work by this time, then I know
Right.
to cut it out. I mean, if perchance I didn't set a time scale for myself with the Chelsea deal, right? I would
Mm.
have been trying to push at it, and I would probably have begun to get frustrated, thinking that,
Mm.
look, this thing isn't working. But because within the time skills I set, the things I needed to achieve weren't achievable, I thought, you know what, let's just leave it at is. And I left the
Mm.
Chelsea deal and I pulled out of it.
So I'm sure
And
you're aware. Maybe you don't know. Chelsea is my club. Is my favorite club, the best club in London. So, so that means that if you had gone through this and it worked, we'll be talking about a Dr. Nicolas consortium handling
Yep,
Chelsea and not Bully that is there right now.
correct, correct.
Interesting.
And then more important, remember to celebrate the small wins.
Mm. Right. And I have a couple of things.
Okay.
Again, examples. So the first example is about Achiever Zone itself.
Yes.
So when the inspiration came to me in 2020, I was scared. I've never done anything like this before, right? I was just minding my own business in my own corner. The good thing was I had maxed out the limit in Facebook. I had 5,000 connections and 30,000 on LinkedIn. So I was already maxed out everywhere, you know. And the idea was just like, okay, since you have this platform, can you just do something about it? I
Mm,
didn't know how to go about this, no production knowledge about anything. But one of the things I did, like I keep mentioning, is I went back to research and I started looking at, okay, different shows, Tyra
yeah,
Banks show. I looked at Idols. I looked at how all those things happen. And then I started zeroing down on online, shows, so to say.
mm,
So if you call
mhm,
it season one, how many episodes do you need in that season? I started checking
mhm.
that out and all of that. But again, it got to a point where I felt that, okay, you have enough information. And there's something called progressive elaboration in project management that
Mm,
you don't need to know everything. But if you know
yes,
enough, start with that.
correct,
And then as
correct.
you continue, more knowledge and more
And to come
insights will
to
come.
you
So
and they
that's what I
pull
did.
back. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. So I just started and I just started writing, write-ups and all that. And I started thinking about my connection that, okay, who are the people I know that I can call in to just join? I didn't even think about technology. Remember, I'm a techie
yeah.
person. I work in
Yes, yes,
telecoms. I didn't even think about it. I was just thinking about other things, logistics. How do we do it? Oh, I need to have internet access at home. I didn't know how to go about it. The very first episode of season one, if you listen to it, you hear so much noise in the background. We were using Instagram. My
I
other
remember.
colleague that joined us, we didn't know how to go about Instagram because she's also a techie person. She's been in ICT for so long. In fact, she's the
Right,
current MD of Nigecomsat now in Nigeria. She just came on board. Her name is Jane, and she just came on board and like, "She, don't worry, let's just do this. Let's just start. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step." And she
that's the
encouraged
first
me.
step.
And we just decided on the date and said, okay, join me on Instagram. She joined. I was looking for her. Jane, I can't see you. Where are you? Everybody
I remember
and
some of
people
the
were
audio.
already
Yes.
exactly. And people were already joining. And I'm like, I can't see you. Okay, okay, I can see you now. But I was determined that I was going to start. And I started, right? And we did that first
Yeah,
episode. And then someone just reached out to me and said, "Oh, Shay, there's a better app that you can use." They sent it to me. I tried it out and all of that. And that's what we're using right now, StreamYard.
yes,
You know,
yes,
and
yes,
people started saying, "Okay, you know what? Don't stop. I like what you did. Just continue. Okay, maybe a few things you might change here and there." And that's how we started. And we went
yes,
on and on and on like that. Unfortunately, COVID happened in between around
yes,
March, and
yes,
everything was just scattered. Everybody was trying to get their feet, and of course, it affected me as well. But I came back
yes,
around July, August, and we continued again till we finished. And that's why, even though there was fear, just like you're saying, I was determined to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this. Some
yeah,
of them I didn't have the resources. I collaborated with people. I
yeah,
reached out to my network, my connections, and that's how we did.
yes,
And I'm happy that despite that initial, stumbling, everything's scaled through and we're
correct,
now doing season two. So
correct.
that's a typical example of trying to overcome trying to achieve
Yeah.
something, but overcoming that fear as an obstacle. The
Yes.
second point is about my career, and I think I stated that in my post yesterday. So it got to a point in my career. I got a good job. I landed a good job. Everything was fantastic. I just got married. Everything was fine. Good job, have a place to stay, and all of that. But I was
Mm.
restless. I was there for like a year and 6 months. And I realized that a lot of my colleagues were not going consulting. They were getting jobs, being paid $350 a day, everywhere and all of that. And I'm like, wow, I want to do this, you know. And I started reaching out and I got a contract job, but it was way in Congo, Brazzaville, Republic of Congo. And my father-in-law got to know about it and he called me. I was like, young man. And when your father-in-law starts with that young man, it's a serious conversation. So he said, okay, you married my daughter last year. You just had a son in December and you are thinking of quitting this job to go out of the country to an unknown place. And that he's not in support of this, that he feels is irrational of me, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, sir, thank you very much. I know your concern. I have that concern as well. However, it's a very, very peculiar time in my career, and I think this will be the right opportunity. So you asked me the question, okay, so you're going consulting, that means contract is not permanent. I said yes. Okay, so it's going to be a revolving contract. I said yes. What's the duration? 6 months. That was all I got. And I remember at the time I was in the UK on training by my organization at the time. And this consultant met me there because we've been exchanging emails. So when I told them I was going to be in the UK, they came around. We met in, I think it was in McDonald's somewhere in Slough. We met there, I sat down, and they presented everything. And I was like, okay, this is fantastic. I'm going to sign and join. 6 months contract. Of course, I was fearful. But again, I did some study about a couple of things. So firstly, for my father-in-law, I wanted him because he was aware that there was some war happening in Congo,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was the Republic of Congo,
Of Congo.
DRC,
Yeah.
and
Not
not
Congo. Yeah.
Congo Brazzaville,
Brazzaville.
right? Because
Yeah.
there are two, Congo
Yes.
Brazzaville and Kinshasa. So I told
Right.
him, okay, I'm actually going to Brazzaville, not Kinshasa. So he was like, okay, fine. Then I went on the CIA website to read up about Congo
Yeah.
Brazzaville
Yeah.
with all
Yeah.
their details and everything because I wanted to eliminate that fear. Everybody
Yes.
was fearful for me. Even my own mother was like, where are you going? They speak French, they don't speak English. You don't know anybody there and all of that. But I sat down with my wife and we discussed and I said, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
This is a good point in my career. I know what I said. If I fail, I will know I've tried it and then
Yes.
I'll come back and get another job in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And my
Yes.
father-in-law was like, Sheyi. I said, yeah, Dad, just allow me do this because it was critical. I discussed with everybody. My son was 3 weeks old when I left. And I got a plane to Addis Ababa, from Addis Ababa straight to Congo, Brazzaville. They picked me up at the airport. The little French I learned in nursery school, primary school, that was all I could speak back and forth. But the good thing was they wanted to learn English.
Fantastic.
So they were also willing to communicate with me in English to learn. And then I would try my French and we shall found a way of
Yeah.
communicating.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
got me to the hotel 31st of December. I still remember I was in the hotel 2006. And I was hearing a willow everywhere outside. People were blasting, singing, And I got there and I was like, Sheyi, what have you done? You just quit your job and you're here for something that is unknown. But the good thing was I backed up myself to say, okay, you know what? If this fails, I will have learned how not to do this,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Everybody was scared for me, but I said, you know what? Let me just. And I went there 6 months working with that international organization that it was a Pan-African company. So they had, installations in Africa and different locations in Africa. I did the 6 months. Before the 6 months ended, they called me back to renew the contract, extended it by another 6 months, making a year.
Yeah.
And then I started signing yearly contracts instead of just the small ones. At the end
Yeah.
of the day, I worked in multiple locations: Burkina Faso, Niger, Congo, Brazzaville, Chad, and then Ghana. And it was a space of 4 years.
I remember that period
And
of your life because you and I used to get in
absolutely,
contact online.
yeah, yeah. And you know what? The connections and the experiences I gained in those 4 years as a consultant, because it was during that period I also did my project management certification. I was starting to lead projects from start to finish and do it the proper way, using the proper method. The
Yeah.
experiences I gained, the connections I gained there, I am still reaping from it now. And I'm talking almost 18, 17 years after. Some people will still tell me, oh, the way you ran that project in Chad, I have somebody that is interested. Oh, and then I'll tell them, yeah, okay, this is my rate. I'll just take some days off work and I'll attend to you and we can resolve it and I get my money and all of that. So at the end of the day, when I started going around like that, my father-in-law had to call me and say, you know what? I trust you now because you took a chance on yourself and you backed yourself up and it came out successful. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, because when we're in Ghana and all the other places, we'll invite them, fly them in to come and stay with
Yeah.
us. And they
Yeah.
saw,
Yeah. Yeah.
the setting. I was like, wow, consultant. Oh, okay, you guys are enjoying. So that is another area where I was faced with that decision from a career point of view. It was fearful. There was a fear of the unknown, but I kind of reduced the unknown by doing some research and getting
Yeah.
adequate information that
Yeah.
could make me decide on how to do stuff. And at the end of the day, I was better for it. Till today, I still have that network of people around me. I still have people I can say, oh, I know somebody in Chad. Don't worry, we'll get it done. I know somebody in Burkina Faso. Don't worry, in Niger. And I'm just like, wow, if I didn't do that at that period of my career, I'm sure I will still be regretting it now,
Yeah.
you know. So
And
I just wanted to add that to the things that you've
and,
highlighted.
and and I really appreciate the fact that you've shared that experience, because one of the things that you have brought to the table, right, which a lot of times that we are often not willing to admit to, is regret,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? We tend to regret when we've been fearful to take action when we should ideally have taken action, in which case
Mm.
it's a consequence of an action we've taken or failed to take, which is why,
Right.
again, I mean, as you spoke, I kept looking at the list of what it is that I've written out as action plans, and
Mm.
everything that has been stated as part of your action plan is exactly part of what it is that you've referred to as what you've had to do. And more
Right.
importantly, the fact that you had the mind to say to yourself, look, you know what, if this fails, we pull out. And when it didn't fail, and gladly it hadn't failed, you've had
Yeah.
something to celebrate. And
Yeah,
people,
absolutely.
and this is the thing people tend not to realize, is that when you're still doing the small wins, when you're celebrating the small
Mm.
wins, you're learning to appreciate what it is you've achieved. By the time those
Right.
small wins start to really grow into the bigger wins and everybody starts to see it, everybody then starts to celebrate with you, right? But you
Absolutely.
need to learn to celebrate yourself as well, which I think
Yeah.
is one of the most important part of this entire experience. And more importantly, the fact that if you don't do that, nobody will do it for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Correct. Correct. Wow. You know what? You know why I said why I had that expression, because I just glanced at the time and I'm like, whoa, almost an hour, 30 minutes, and it doesn't
Yeah,
feel like we've even done
we've done much.
anything. You know what they say, like that time flies when you're having fun. It's been
Yes,
fun talking to you. I mean, like I said, we do this on a regular basis. This is just the
yes,
first time we're recording it for people to just
true,
experience.
true,
We do
true.
this on a regular basis, sometimes 2 hours. Sometimes it gets to a point that my wife is like, wait, who are you talking to on the phone? Because like, what's happening? Because we keep bouncing ideas off each other, we keep talking. And I'm just happy that you are the first person to kickstart season two.
Thank you.
And I want to say
I'm
thank you
honored.
very much
I'm very
for
honored.
this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
To the community, we're still going to be available online. So any
Yeah,
questions you have, just drop
correct.
it in the comment section.
Yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah.
can engage Dr. Nicholas via these links on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and
Yes.
Skype. Wow,
Yeah.
I've not used Skype in a long time, but okay, good to know. That's good to
Yeah.
know.
Because yeah,
So
because
you're
I
still a
realized.
bit of old school, right?
Oh yeah, I'm very old school. I'm very old
Wow.
school.
Okay.
Even
Okay.
though even though I make fun of myself that I I I I do a lot of technology strategy, right? And I look
Mm,
at technology on a regular basis, but I'm one person who sticks very, very religiously to certain old school methods, not because I don't want to shift, but because I realize that, look, spend more time doing what you know how to do,
Absolutely.
right?
I get that.
And
I get
yeah,
that.
and if perchance, and for me, I'm one person, and if you remember when we were trying to get the profile pictures, you spent so much time waiting for me to try to get your profile picture
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't take pictures. But again,
Yeah.
it's important to know what you know, and um, yes, learn, which is, again, I think, is one part that um, we need to always do. Again, you mentioned that at some point in time, so there's a need to always learn, and more importantly, it's also important to understand where it is that you want to draw a line on certain things.
Right.
And because I
Yeah.
like to keep a very private approach to things I do, and I'm
Mm.
also one person who believes that what you share or what you speak of, you need to ensure that it's something that you live every day of your
Mm.
life, so that you're not
Absolutely.
misleading people. So again, I'm very particular about how I share, what I share, and
Mm.
when I share.
Mm.
So these
Right.
are, for me, the avenues through which I believe I can manage what I share in a way that makes sense and will add
Mm.
value to people. Which is why
Right.
I'm not one who goes online very often to write stuff, because again, I believe that people can write, people can say, people can do a lot of stuff. It's not a
Right.
problem. But the question here is, are there results to some of the things that people are saying, right?
Mm.
And results
Mm.
isn't about it being, oh, I did a deal and that deal worked. Are you
Right.
continually doing these things, and is it
Correct.
continually making positive impact?
Correct. So thank you very much. I mean, and that's one of the reasons for Achievers Zone, because like I told you when we started at the top of the show, it was just to gather a couple of my friends together and share principles. Because I realized, just like you said, people write stuff on social media, on the internet, and everything. But I wanted to show practically principles and things that I've used over the years. The body of knowledge that I have, about some of these things are over 2 decades. And I
Yes,
felt if I've constantly done this over 2 decades and I've seen results, it would help someone out there. We're not
yeah,
saying we're experts. We're just saying, look, are the things that
correct,
we have done that
correct,
has brought
correct,
results for us to
correct,
achieve our goals and targets. And that's the whole
correct,
idea. Again,
correct.
talking about fear, we're just scratching the surface. There's so many things to
Yes,
talk about.
yes,
Again,
yes,
time will fail us to look at this in detail.
yeah,
However, we can still engage and interact with myself,
yes,
with Dr. Nicholas online via this different media, and we can continue that conversation. The
yes,
whole of January, the whole of 2024, if there's still issues about fear that you want to talk about, please come to the comment section, drop your comments, drop your questions.
yeah,
We will jump on it, we will answer, and we'll
yeah,
just engage further. The whole
yeah,
idea for us is to ensure that you achieve your goals and targets
correct,
for
yeah,
2024.
correct.
Just to wrap up, so I put up a poll on the groups just to ask. One of the things that you need to do, firstly, before you even set goals and targets for 2024, is to review 2023.
Mm,
So the question is, have you done that? Can you sit down with a piece of paper and just run your mind through 2023? The
mm,
things you've done that are right, the things you've done that are not so good. How do you
mm,
correct them? Because it's not just a new year for a new year's sake. You
mm-hmm.
should grow year on year.
Yes,
So setting goals and targets are fine, but it should be pointing towards growth.
yes,
Like someone would say, if you respond to the same thing this year, the same way you did last year, then you've not grown. So
no,
sit down, do that review of 2023. When you're
yeah,
done, don't condemn yourself. You might not have done fantastic, but just do the review and then
yeah,
set yourself and say, okay, you know what, 2024, I want to do this differently. Is it your finances? Is it your relationship with people? If you're married, if you're single, is it your vocation, your career? Is it, your hobbies or any other thing? Sit down. And that's why this group has been created. There are different areas, to look at to manage your life and be balanced.
mm,
When you're done with that, set the goals for 2024, right? Then break it down to quarters to say, okay, Q1, this is what I want to do.
yeah,
Remember, you are the CEO of your life. Companies
true,
and organizations worldwide do the same thing. They set appraisals, they review their year before, and
yeah,
then they set appraisals and goals and targets for the year. And
yeah,
at each quarter, they double check to be sure. So if there's a need to change course, you can do that as well.
Correct.
And the
Yeah.
ultimate goal is that by the time we review 2024, you would have done better than 2023. That's
Correct.
the aim of Achievers Zone. And I want to thank you, Dr. Nicholas, for coming, for being
Thank
our
you.
very first guest, for kickstarting this 2024 fantastically.
Thank
It's a marker now for all the other guests that are coming, because it can't be below the standard. Presentation wise, the timelines we've had, the conversations we've had, it's a marker for everyone coming now. So I'm going to
Thank you.
set this as standard for the guys that are coming in March, in April, in February, and all the way down. Thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate you for spending time with us, an hour and a half. I'm so glad, and I'm humbled as well that you thought it right to sit with me for an hour and a half just to gist and discuss. I want to thank you and appreciate
Thank
you for
you.
that.
Thank you.
Right. So to the
Thank
rest
you.
of the community, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor.
I was just saying thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share and to express my opinions, even though I know that
Right.
people may have other opinions. I'm happy to hear the other opinions, but again, these are
Absolutely.
things that have been my guiding light over the years
Yes.
and still
Yeah.
guide me as I go.
Thank you. So to the rest of the community, watch out for this episode. We'll drop it in the groups. And then, like I said, we'll continue with the engagement. So any questions you have, any comments, just put it in the section. Dr. Nicholas and I will still be online. So
Yeah.
we'll answer them and then continue the engagement. This is not just for January. This is for the entire 2024. So feel free to buzz and put your comments in, and we'll answer. There'll be another episode coming in February, and I'll just give you a highlight of that. That episode, because February is dedicated to the month of love, Valentine, and everything, that episode will be dedicated to marriages. So I'm going to have my wife come on, as well as a couple friend of ours, to discuss about marriage and things like that, just to help people as well. So remember, I mentioned different sections that you need to set your goals and targets to live a balanced life. Relationship is one of them. So for those who are married, we'll have some information. And because we were singles before, we can
Yeah.
also talk about, single life and everything. So watch out for that. And that will come in February around Valentine's Day. So stay tuned. And lastly, just to say a big thank you to everybody. Big thank you to my guests for today. We'll catch up next time on Achievers Zone Season 2, Episode 2. So watch out for it. Thank you. Good night and God bless. Bye.